Presenting today's webinar, Guide from Staples, How the AR Department Could Deliver on the CFO's Expectations in 2021, are George Yuko, Credit Manager of Staples Promotional Products, and Elaine Nowak, Director of Product Management and Marketing at HighRadius. So without further ado, I'm pleased to turn the program over to our first presenter, Elaine Nowak. Take it away, Elaine.
Thank you so much, Patricia. We're excited to be here. So George's background, he's a credit manager with Staples Promotional Products, and he's been in the credit industry for the past 25 plus years. George focuses on processes and improving team performance to deliver results. As the Director of Product Marketing Management, I'm dedicated to educating credit and AR practitioners about the impact of using an integrated receivables workflow that's enabled by artificial intelligence that'll help improve key receivables operating metrics. So for today, we're going to be talking about a very important topic, and it's really trending right now in the finance space, something we call cash excellence. George is going to be telling us about cash excellence and then talking a little bit more about how executives in the AR environment see it as the next big thing for 2021. And then George is going to do a deep dive into the Staples roadmap, talking a little bit more about this cash excellence and what Staples was looking to achieve with their collections automation, and then the role that HighRadius played in their journey to date. And then we'll summarize the key points of the conversation, and then I'll just tell you a little bit more about HighRadius and who we are and what we do. So I'm now going to hand it over to George.
All right, thank you, Elaine. So let's go ahead and define what cash excellence is. Let's go ahead and start with that, and we'll go ahead and lead into the rest of the presentation. So if you want to hit the next slide there. So basically what we're trying to do with cash excellence, we're trying to elevate the AR into a strategic CFO priority. Being in AR, we're trying to bring in as far as the cash. We're trying to determine what we can do with that cash, how that cash plays into our overall accounting. So once again, we want to bring in as much cash as we can to help drive some of the business, some of the processes that we're looking to do. And what are the big things from a CFO priority? They want the cash. We want the cash to reinvest into the business. Next, please. So here's basically from McKinsey & Company, here is a definition here. So we could go ahead and define this. So one of the things we need to think of, if you look to the left there, we want to move from cash preservation to cash excellence for the next normal. So think about that, for the next normal. So if you look to the right, this is more of a definition, kind of what we're looking to do. So it's a long-term culture shift that's going to enable proactive liquidity management. So we're trying to take that, get that cash, and turn it back into the business. Because your receivables, once again, that's money that's owed to us, that's liquid. We want that, and we want to manage as far as those receivables to bring them back into the business, get those paid. So once again, we have money on the books. Next, please. Patty, you want to go and ask the question? Well, let me go and ask the question here. So do you feel your AR team has the ability to be strategic within respect to how they think about cash and AR impact on the business? So you have four choices here. Yes, completely. Yes, but not fully there yet. No, barring a few exception situations, or not at all. So we'll give everybody just a minute to go ahead and respond to this.
Yeah, and just to interject here, George, we're talking about the analysts on the teams, the people who are applying the cash, the ones who are picking up the phone and calling the customers, who are doing the credit reviews, resolving the deductions. Do they really have the bandwidth to think strategically? That's what we're kind of looking for in terms of answers here.
And we do have 67% have voted at this point in time. Do you want to give it a little bit more time? And anybody who has not voted, please do. We're interested in your point of view.
And then I say once the answers come in, Patty, if you could share them with us, but I would say, George, why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit
Sure.
about the steps involved.
Okay, you want to go ahead and flip the slide?
It should be on the automation of clerical tasks. Can you see that? Oh, you have to wait to the poll question. I think the poll question has to come down.
Yep, and I've
then
just closed the poll question, so hopefully we should be able to get your screen back up again. And because I'm not seeing that right now. Are you seeing the screen with this slide deck, George?
No.
There we go. Okay.
There, now I can see it.
And I can share the poll results if you would like. We have
Yes, please.
29% have responded with yes completely, 57% with yes, but not fully there yet. 14% have responded with no, barring a few exceptional situations. And we had no one who responded with not at all.
Okay.
Okay. And does that surprise you at all, George? Or how many was it completely? 29%?
I think that was interesting. I like as far as you know, how they impact as far as the business. I mean, everything they do impacts everything that happens with the AR. So definitely, I like as far as number one completely. But you know, once again, every business is different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so let's have you talk a little bit about the steps involved.
Okay. So a couple of things that we look for with automation of different clerical tasks. So a couple of things that we want to do to help drive the cash excellence. So from a team perspective, what can we do to help drive as far as this automation? So one of the things we want to do is create as far as that automation. And basically by creating the automation, it's going to give us more bandwidth. And that bandwidth, we're going to go ahead and use for strategic thought. So think of as far as taking away some of the clerical items where maybe we're printing different things, maybe we're sending things out to our customer that away, and it gives us more time to spend as far as looking at the overall AR and what we could do to bring in some more receivables. Next one, please.
I would also say it's also of note too that when you also raise the skill level of your analysts, it also raises the skill, it raises them as individuals to become more strategic in their own roles. So it's an important piece too.
Mm-hmm. Number two, other thing to think about that we're focused on is giving as far as looking at the data, driving as far as some of the different decisions. So from a cash excellence, other thing to think about is making better decisions. So to add to what Elaine's saying, you know, think about the more trained we are, the more informed we are, the better decisions that we're going to be able to make, the better we're going to be able to dig through some of the data. A lot of times people forget there's a lot of information that's out there. It's just a matter of interpreting and digging into the data. Okay, next.
Yeah, and I would also say too, you know, you can get some really well-informed decisions because you can take in a lot of data, things like credit agency information, public financial statements, all that can make it much easier for your staff to be able to make decisions quickly and to do it in a much smarter way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, step three. Oh, here we go. Okay, step three, impact beyond as far as the accounts receivable KPIs. So what are the things to keep in mind with as far as your KPIs? Look at different things that impact as far as the KPIs. So think of some of the things that impact whether it's your sales, your logistics, and other things that you can do to prevent the different leakage, drive revenue and improve customer experience. So the more we could drive, the more we're focused on the AR, the better we could put as far as some of the KPIs and process. But just like it's stating here, and this is one big thing that we focus on at Staples, that customer experience. So if we could drive that customer experience, that carries throughout as far as all the departments. Other thing to think about with cash excellence, we want to elevate this into a strategic CFO priority. So here's a couple things that we've already talked about. You know, to kind of sum this up, we talked about the automation of the clerical tasks. We talked about the data-driven decisions and some of the impact beyond as far as our KPIs. So let me go in and I'm going to share some personal anecdotes from Staples. I want to share with you some of the different things that we did at Staples. And one of the first things I want to go over with you is just kind of give you a brief overview of the division I'm in. So Staples, I work in what's called the Promotional Products division. So if you look around your desk, maybe you have a cup, a mug, a shirt, pen, paper, anything with your company logo on, that's what we do. So our goal, once again, is to work with different businesses. So what's unique in our shop of business is we work across the full spectrum. So whether it's pharmaceuticals, whether it's farmers, whether it's like Kubota, we have a vast amount of different customers. So that makes it a little cumbersome for us from a collection standpoint because you're dealing with so many different groups of customers. Next. So one of the things that we looked at from a business standpoint was what can we do to maximize as far as some of our cash? So one of the things we had to think of is working directly with our sales group. If you look on the left there, maximizing revenue with credit and sales collaboration. So that was an interesting endeavor because that's something we didn't put a lot of focus on before. But we worked together with sales. We focused on some of our key customers. We were able to find some of the shortcomings, some of the different things that we can do to make it easier for sales, and in turn, help as far as the customer. Other thing that we did, and this is a big one that we used HighRadius for, looked at as far as our cash flow and did what we call proactive collections. So proactive collections, knowing ahead of time what the different balances are out there, knowing how to group as far as our different customers together. Other thing with proactive collections is really knowing the customer, knowing how they're going to pay, and knowing what we could do to work directly with them. Next one. Okay, next poll question. Do you want to ask it, Elaine, or do you want me to ask it?
Sure, I can ask. Okay. We're tapping into the audience here. What is the biggest collection challenge that you face today? And you've got 4 options here. Is it that you're challenged with limited visibility across a large customer portfolio? Maybe it's manual or maybe semi-automated prioritization and dunning. Perhaps it's a collection team that your efficiency is just not up to the mark, or maybe you have no challenges. Our collections process is perfect. I'd like to see how many people pick number 4. But yeah, I think, when you talk about large customer portfolios, there's a lot of customers will say they only get to the most important accounts, either the largest accounts that they have or the noisiest accounts that they have, and that there's a lot of smaller accounts that are just kind of running along, and then all of a sudden something happens, some outside factor or something else, and then those accounts need attention, but they didn't know it until the last minute. I've heard that scenario before. So just a few more seconds here, we'll do the polling question. And then, of course, the collection team efficiency, I think it all ties into things like having a lot of that manual tasks and not being able to prioritize. How are you doing your outreach? Who are you going to collect from first? Is it aging buckets that you're going to look at? Is it amount? And sometimes when you just start that way, you don't always get to the customers who might need the most attention. So, did you pick number 4, George? No challenges?
You know what? That's a good question. I mean, I'm really thinking about this one.
Okay, so I think we'll be closing the poll now.
Of course. And let me see if I am able to share the results to you on the screen. If not, I will read it to you. I don't know if you can see it there, Elaine. But we have 20% have selected limited visibility across a large consumer portfolio. 80% with manual semi-automated prioritization and dunning, 0 on collection team efficiency not up to the mark, and 0 on no challenges.
Okay, so the majority had this manual or semi-automated prioritization. That was their biggest challenge. Thoughts, George?
You know what? I think that's interesting to look at, and I just think that gives a lot of opportunity in the AR arena to really go in and figure out what can be done with prioritization and dunning. And once you get in there and put that to the test, that could really make a difference.
Okay, nice. Okay, so I'm going to just let me know if you can see the collection process before automation. Is that still sharing now?
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
It's still sharing.
Okay, great.
Okay. To add to what Elaine was saying, so a couple things we want to look at. One of the things that we focused on, and this is really prior to our automation. So prior to going into using the automation, one of the big things that we ran into is we have a large customer portfolio. Well, some of our large customers may have 200 accounts. Well, part of the problem was out of those 200 accounts, we're only focusing on maybe 3 or 4. So good and bad. Good, we're focused on the 4 main accounts. Bad in a sense because we didn't address the other accounts. So there were a lot of accounts that should have been addressed at the same time that weren't. So that would be the first one. Second one here, low frequency aging as far as analyst and prioritization. So prior to going automated before using as far as HighRadius, one of the things that we ran into is we weren't prioritizing our work correctly. So like Elaine alluded to earlier, she was saying you have some of the customers that have the loud voices, you put your focus on those key customers. Hard part is when you do that, you're missing other customers. So one of the things we started doing by going in and prioritizing the workload, we're able to focus on some of the bigger customers in not just one account, but all the different accounts. And that also ties to the first one. Third one, which was unfortunate, but at the moment, prior to using automation, everything we did was manual. So we had to print out our different invoices. We had to manually track some of the different invoices, the customer's concerns. And the hard part with that is if we had multiple credit reps, they weren't always sharing all the information. So that was definitely kind of a holdup in the whole process. So that was another reason we wanted to go to automation. So one of the things that we also ran into, and this is probably something most of you could definitely relate to, at the given moment prior to going with automation, we had roughly about 7 different credit reps that were handling 10,000 accounts. So one of the things that we ran into is they just couldn't hit all the accounts. There were too much workload out there. They couldn't send out all the dunning. They couldn't have the necessary follow-ups with as far as the customer. That definitely impacted as far as our DSO because we didn't have enough contact out there. And then the other thing that we ran into is we had what we call a parent-child situation. So the parent being the main company, and maybe the child could be different divisions within the company. Some of our customers have a main corporate account, and they may have different dealers under that particular account. But what was happening is we just couldn't get to all those customers. So once again, this was a big issue for us with that low visibility. So if you look on here, here's some other things that we had to look at. As the different invoices increased, well, so did our past due. So we had an increased aging on our past due invoices. So that was definitely an issue. Other thing that we had to look at as you look at the screen, think of all the different reports and the different aging analysis. That was all done manually versus through the system. Other thing that we didn't really have a standard way to go in a process to prioritize as far as our dunning. Yes, it was manual, but it would print out once a month, but it could take a week for us to get all the statements and invoices out to our customers. So that was a huge challenge. And other thing with that, we couldn't group some of the different customers together if they had multiple accounts. So once again, that was another process that we ran into. So notice on here, this ties to what I just stated. Think about as far as the invoice tracking on the different customers and the different portals. So one thing to understand is with the different portals, some of your AP departments, AP groups, they have different portals that you're going to have to sign into. You're going to have to feed over some of the different invoices and different statements. So one of the things to keep in mind with that, it was all manual. So manual report generation, manual aging, just like what we stated before. Other thing, once again, this kind of ties to the previous slide. Everything, once again, was manual, and the dunning, once again, was a manual process. So as you could see with this in the previous slide, a lot of work we had to do. So just to sum up some of the different challenges, and once again, this is just a quick summary of what we just talked about. With the number of customers, it is looking at the different aging, looking at some of the different processes. And if you look down towards the left side of that, towards the middle, once again, can we go in, can we look at the different customer portfolios and really group as far as our customers together? Other thing that we ran into was the different dunning. It was going to, let's say, the same customer with 20 different accounts with 20 different as far as statements. So once again, that was a big thing to keep in mind. And then finally, to the bottom right there, just like what we just went into on the previous slide, getting that information into the different AP portals, and that's where we wanted the automation to really help us. So here's some different key benefits, and this is where we reached out to HighRadius and we used as far as their different clouds, the different modules to help us. So one of the things that we learned right off the bat, and this is through their collection module, is that we could handle as far as a bigger bandwidth. So if you recall going back several different slides, we had over 10,000 accounts. Well, now that we had HighRadius, we could go ahead and start grouping those customers together, working them together, working smarter, working more efficient. Other thing, what I think really kind of stands out, and I look at this on a daily basis, real-time aging. I can look at the different reports. I know what's going on with the different customers. Other thing, I could hold the different reps accountable for some of the different accounts. But probably the best thing is I could see one customer go from bucket to bucket to bucket. And I know, hey, we need to focus on this particular customer to get it collected. And really at the bottom right, this pretty much says it all. The productivity increased. The reason the productivity increased is we're able to group our different customers together. We're able to set different strategies, and we were able to get things collected. So that really made a big difference. And other thing, the reps have a lot of fun in the system because now they can work more accounts and their notes and so forth. You're going to see in the next couple of screens, you'll see some of the little tricks that we've used. So here is a good one, and this is something, I actually send this out once a week. We have what we call automated correspondence. So what automated correspondence does is we have our different customers set up in different segments. So depending on which segment the customer sits in, they in turn could get special dunning. We could set different letters for different customer bases. And where it says automated, we have it set where if it's a new customer, they may get a welcome as far as statement, just saying, hey, you have these invoices coming due in X amount of days. Or if they're past due, you could go ahead and set the different period when you want the letters to go out. So most companies, maybe at day 10, maybe at day 20, maybe at day 30, and so forth. So you set that in the system and you don't have to focus on that anymore. You let the system take care of the different letters. And you could always change the letters. You could always change as far as the different threshold when those letters go out. And best thing with that is you're going to get the correspondence coming back from the customer. And one thing to kind of add to this, we actually have it set where not only does the customer get the letter, but we also put links in the letter so they can make the payment just by clicking on the letter. And that's really driven up as far as getting our payments in. Next. Okay. Other thing that you can do, and this is what I was referring to earlier. If you look on your screen, this gives you as far as different things that you could go ahead and sort. So notice on there, you have what's called a score in the middle, like the fourth column over. You also have what we call a strategy, and you also have what we call a priority. So you could go ahead and set this in the system, and you can let the reps know, hey, these are the accounts that have a high priority. We want you to go in, work those accounts right away. And you could set that based on different thresholds. Maybe it's based on the different strategy, or maybe it's based on the score. And that will help them prioritize the work so that they in turn could focus on the key accounts, or the key accounts that need the most attention. A lot of times what happens on some of these is if you don't put that scoring in, you may miss some of these different accounts, and not always a bad thing, but some of these smaller customers can add up pretty quick, and that's why you want to put this different score system in there. And that priority really helps as far as the reps to go in. And notice when Elaine's hovering over priority, if you were in the system, you could actually sort it and say, I only want to see the high priority accounts. So this is basically a work list for the credit analyst, and they in turn could go ahead and sort it and work right down that list. So it's really effective as far as going in there and doing the work. Other thing that we do, and this has been highly effective for us, we can actually go in and we have it set in our system where we could look at an account, and maybe we've done all the different work efforts. Maybe we've got a customer where we're just kind of spinning our wheels with. So if you run into that, you could actually have it set in your system where you could actually transfer accounts to a collection agency. So we have it set, and if you look at the one that's got the little red around it, the very far left, you just click on a little radio button right in front of the account. When you do that, and then you hit submit, it will automatically take that account and it will send it to the collection agency. What's pretty slick with this is you don't have to provide any additional information. All the information, your notes, the pay history, the customer information, all that transfers over to the collection agency. So we literally, from time to time, will send accounts to the collection agency, and they will start working it within, let's say, an hour. That's how quick you could get this over, and all the information transfers over. It's a pretty quick process. And once again, where Elaine's hovering right there, you just click on transfer, and when you hit transfer, it will automatically send it to the collection agency. The good thing too is if you were to go back a slide, you can see where basically who it's assigned to. I don't know if it's on this one, but normally you could go ahead and see where it's been assigned to. So if it's assigned to the collection agency, you could actually see that the rep is now the collection agency. So that makes it very effective, because if another person calls in or they want to make a payment, you can still take the payment, but it is being worked by the collection agency. Now, because we put all this into place, because we put a lot of focus on reducing as far as our DSO, we actually had a 5 to 6 day reduction in our DSO. Overall, it was a 27% reduction in past due. Very effective. It did take a while to get to learn as far as the system, learn as far as some of the different things that we can do. It was great results, and once again, getting everybody to learn the system, to utilize the system, to learn as far as the different reporting has really made it a very effective system for us, and very, once again, management has really loved it because we have reduced our DSO, and that's huge. And 5 to 6 days may not sound like a lot, but depending on your company, your DSO could be worth X amount of dollars. So figure out how much 1 day of your DSO is worth and take that times the number of days. And that's where you could really see the savings. All right, let me go into a quick little summary here, and then I'll turn it back over to Elaine. So once again, we talked about cash excellence. We talked about the elimination of clerical tasks. I don't know about you, but anytime I could automate and I don't see paper, I'm happy. So once again, what can we do to reduce some of those clerical tasks? And it's not to say those clerical tasks are, how should I say it? They're needed in the AR arena, but let the system do it for you. That's the whole key behind this. You want the system to do it for you. Other thing, like Elaine talked about earlier, as far as data-driven decisions, let the system give you the data. As the system gives you the data, start setting rules, determining where you need to put your focus. Information's there. We just need to dig into the data to help us make the best decisions. And the better thing with the data-driven, you could see the trends as you start utilizing the different reports. So that's a huge win right there. And then other thing to the far right, keep in mind that your KPIs, what you're focused on, is going to have a lasting effect across all of the departments. So for example, with Staples, what we ended up finding is our sales group actually at first didn't like the reporting because there was a lot on the reporting. But as soon as we fine-tuned it and we started sending out monthly or bi-weekly updates to them, they started to buy into it, and we started to work together as a joint group, and that's really made it a huge win for the customer experience. And end of the day, that's one of our key terms, is driving that customer experience. And that once again ties to the first point here, working together with your sales. And the other thing with sales, what we also found is by providing the report, they also know who to focus on if there's credit sitting out there. You know, what else can they do to help drive some of the different things? And once again, they're also starting to get held accountable to some of our aging also. So it's really turning into a win-win situation all the way around. And then finally, to the far right, maximizing as far as our cash flow, that proactive collections. I think just that word right there, that proactive collections, we talked about the different letters, having them staged at different dates, etc. That takes it away from the collector. And you want that in your system. Let the system once again do the work for you. And the other part with that, if you can't get the customer on the phone, sending these letters out will drive as far as additional volume for you. And that's what you want, so you can resolve and get those payments.
So with that, George, I mean, it seems like you've had some incredible benefits for your collections department and some of the things you've been able to achieve. It's pretty cool. So I'm just going to take a moment now, to talk a little bit about HighRadius. For those of you who may not be familiar with us as an organization, we're a fintech enterprise software as a service company. We leverage artificial intelligence-based autonomous systems to help companies automate accounts receivable and treasury processes. We're headquartered in Houston. We have offices in Europe and Asia, and we're one of the only providers of an integrated receivables platform for the entire order-to-cash cycle. And that includes credit, electronic invoice presentment and payment, cash allocation or application, deductions, and of course, the collections that you heard about today from George. And our treasury management platform, that helps teams to conduct accurate cash forecasting using artificial intelligence. It offers touchless cash management and bank reconciliation. And we've been vetted by industry leaders. We've got strategic partnerships and investments from the likes of Citi, PNC, and Bank of America. And today we really focus on .1 performance, or being a 1 in 1,000. And we work with our clients to help them become a 1 in 1,000 finance and AR department. We recently launched the Radius 1 AR suite, and that's a set of AI-powered solutions designed to support AR processes for mid-sized companies. And it helps them to automate labor-intensive processes, maximize working capital, and enables for smaller and mid-sized organizations to have faster cash conversion. So as an organization, in terms of the experience we've had more than 1,600 plus finance transformation projects across 6 continents, 92 countries, and many years of research and development. And we bring with us a load of experience from working closely with industry leaders such as George, who've implemented our solutions. We have dozens of the largest companies in the world, and they use our AR solutions. But very importantly, we also are represented in a wide range of industries, and we work with any ERP. We even have a large number of mid-sized businesses that help, and we help them to keep their teams lean and efficient as they grow. So here you can kind of see our global footprint. I happen to work out of the offices in Houston, in the headquarters of Houston, but we have also offices all over the globe, and you can see implementations all over the globe. So now we're down to our final poll question, Patricia. If you could launch that, please, and we'll just see if get the pulse from the audience. Would you like to know more about HighRadius, our collections cloud, or maybe any of our other solutions? And if yes, then we're happy to get you in touch with one of our experts who can talk to you about a business case and understanding what kind of return on investment. Maybe you just want some materials to do, you're in the research mode and just want to hear some more or want to have some collateral sent your way, go ahead and click that. And maybe you're interested, but right now you're in the midst of a bunch of stuff going on, then we can always reach out to you later. And maybe you're not interested, I hope you are, that would be nice. But that also brings us now to our Q&A portion. This is where I turn it back over to Patricia. We see if any questions came in during the broadcast.
Thank you very much. We do have a few questions that have come in, but as we begin the Q&A part of the webinar, if you do have any additional questions, please go to the control panel. There is a questions section there. Use the drop down and just type in your question and I will share them. But our first one up is, what are some of the automation solution capabilities for collections that finance leaders today should definitely explore?
George, I think hit on quite a few today in talking about that, some of that, what the collection list prioritization and some other things. But I will just say in terms of some like really kind of cutting edge type things, or things like this dynamic customer segmentation and the ability to sort of slice and dice your customer portfolio to kind of do much more targeted outreach, but also templated outreach. And then one of the artificially intelligent enabled capabilities that we have in our solution is the ability to predict the date that your customers will pay. And that is really kind of neat because that helps you to prioritize these at-risk customers. And it can also help you ensure faster payment and recovery when payments are not forthcoming. So it's kind of a neat thing. George, any thoughts on any other automation?
Yeah, let me add to that. There are a couple other things I would also add to what Elaine said. One of the ones that HighRadius also offers is what we call EIPP. You want to give the customer, make it easier for them to make the payments. So one of the things that you should think about is, do we have a portal, some way for our customer to go in and make the payment? So what EIPP does is that allows the customer to go into a portal with your logo, and they in turn will make the payment, which in turn feeds throughout the collection module. So depending on which module you use with HighRadius, it's just a way to go ahead and track. Customers could even go in, make it ACH, credit card. They could make as far as a scheduled payment. Take the calls out of your credit group, let the system do it for you. And one other thing to kind of add to what Elaine was saying, another thing to think about is the cash application. So we were talking about kind of the clerical, and cash application's a little clerical, but it's a lot of review. But if you think about it, when the payment comes in, if the customer is telling you how to apply the payment, let the system do it for you. So I think the question was, what other things can you do to help as far as your department? Look at all the options that are out there. And one thing I highly advise is try to find where you're spending the most time and what can you do to reduce that and be more effective for your customer.
Yeah, and I would even add that when you think about your clerical manual tasks, is there something that your team does over and over and over again? It's a process that doesn't really change, but they are doing it manually, and that's the perfect candidate for some kind of automation. And it can really help reduce this kind of manual work and allow your teams to do more strategic, value-added, impactful type of work. So.
Thank you very
Any other
much.
questions? Yeah.
Yes, yep, we do have some others here.
Oh, good.
We touched upon the adaptation and integration of technology into an organization. Is there a method to determine the AR analyst's reactions to a new implementation? And how can we help our AR teams adapt to technology?
Let me, Elaine, if you don't mind, I'll start with this one.
Sure.
I think it's a matter of knowing the culture within as far as your organization. The big thing I would say is getting them ready for the change and know that the change isn't not necessarily, let me phrase it this way, it's to help as far as your customer. It's not to eliminate work, it's to make it more effective. So in turn, you could be more customer service orientated for the customer. Because one of the things I'll share with my group, there were some that kind of resisted the change and it made it harder for the customer. It just made it harder for everything. Once they saw everything, they were able to buy into it. But just like anything else from a change management perspective, try to get some key people involved in the process to start with. And the other thing that I would strongly advise is really know your processes. Know as far as what's going on so that as you move into automation, you take everything into account and you're really focused on what you can do to make their jobs easier.
Yeah, and I think you're hitting on key things there, George. You know, it's about training. It's about making sure you have all the right stakeholders involved, and making sure that you are all along the process, getting the people that will actually be using the system involved at the very beginning, even before implementation, to get their feedback and their insights, because they're the ones who are going to be the most impacted and find the most benefit out of it, in addition to the customers that you serve, because you're going to be able to serve them even better. So.
Mhm.
Makes sense, and sounds like ultimately the AR team becomes the champions for the system. So that's obviously what you want to accomplish. Another question that has come up, and George, I think this is mostly to you. So collaboration of sales and credit teams was one of the top priorities you had mentioned in Staples for 2021. Can you give us more information about how your teams collaborated with each other? Are there any best practices there that we could adopt?
Okay, I think with best practices, we were talking about setting up as far as the automation. So as we started setting up the automation, we also started segmenting out some of our customers. So as we started segmenting out our customers, we started working with the sales group, trying to develop the best strategies for the different customers. So one of the things that we try to do is get some of their input. Obviously, in the end, we had the final say, but trying to get their input just to make sure, okay, does this go to one thing with sales, they like to call and talk to the different customers. But in our world, we're talking to AP, but for the most part, you're not always talking to a person. So you have to know where to go ahead and send the information. So one of the big things, once again, making sure we had all the right contact information, setting up the different segments of our customers, setting up the different strategies for the customers, making sure sales understood as far as the dunning, and working with some of the different customers. Not all dunning is meant for all customers, so sometimes you have to have different dunning for some of the different customers. Other thing that we did is we worked with our sales group, and originally we used to send out manual reports, and then we finally were able to work with HighRadius and develop as far as biweekly reports, aging reports that go to our sales group. So one of the things that we found is some of the information we look at is great for us, but they wanted more information. So we were able to add who the buyer was, maybe who the email address is that we sent it to. Some of our individual notes we started putting in the system, and once they saw that, they were able to start working with us. But the other thing, and to kind of add to what Elaine said also, is because we're able to kind of segment the different groups, we also looked at who the different sales reps were for some of the different groups. So we actually started having biweekly or monthly calls with them. And what that's done is what we found is they may have something in their notes that we don't have in our notes. So we're able to do a little comparison. And by doing that, we're able to kind of address some of the issues and prevent the accounts from aging further past due.
That sounds like a total win-win. Everyone's happier.
Thank you very much, George. And I see one final question in the queue, but we do still have some time left. So if you have any additional questions, do enter them into the questions box. So how do you think AI can help in making critical financial decisions?
Elaine, I'll let you start with this one.
Okay, so I think actually one of the things we touched on today, who do you reach out to first? And having something like a dynamic work list for your collections efforts is a tremendous way to be able to know every day who is the person you should be reaching out to. And when you have the artificial intelligence is able to enable a dynamic list, so it's not just Monday you get the list and that's what you work on all week. It could change from a day to day because different criteria, different factors are going to set off notifications or alerts or move the different accounts around within your dashboard, because that work list will change depending on what becomes a priority if other circumstances change and certain factors are affected. So I think that that's a great way to be able to make a critical financial decision, is when you have automation and artificial intelligence that's helping you make better decisions. Another example might be something like a blocked order prediction. So artificial intelligence can actually, again, once it can identify certain factors that might come into play. And when those factors happen, then the system can actually go and send correspondence, for example, to a customer when they're reaching a maximum on their credit limits, and the order is potentially going to be blocked if they don't make a payment. So the system can identify that using the artificial intelligence, send out an alert to the customer saying, here, pay this now so that your credit limits don't get blocked and the order that you're going to be placing doesn't get put on hold. And it can do that automatically. And then when the payment comes in, the system could even process that payment and then apply it immediately, and then send out an alert to the team saying that the status of the account has changed. They've made payment and so forth. So I think that that's another great way that it helps in making critical decisions.
Let me kind of add to what Elaine said. Other thing, when she's saying the different notifications go out to, say, your different customers, you could actually add multiple email addresses. So not only is your customer notified, the sales rep could be notified, maybe your district manager, whoever's handling those different accounts, they get notified also. So automation really brings in better communication to work across not only the customer, but your internal parts of the business. And that's been huge with Staples, because it used to be, well, can you follow up with me? Can you tell me this? Can you do this? And what we found is we were spending too much time going back and forth responding to some of these questions versus just have the system send out as far as the notification. So that was a huge win for us. And once again, automation, it's a good thing. It's just a matter, once again, of knowing where to put your focus and what you could do within as far as the system to make it better. And one thing to add to what Elaine said also, with some of the different automation, we also have the ability to go in and manually send out letters. Well, guess what? I could send out 700 letters in less than 20 minutes. So those 700 letters, I manually go in, I look at my aging, and I sort through my different customer bases, and I manually send out a letter, and I could change the letter, do what's needed, but within like 15, 20 minutes, I'll know who received the letter. And on top of that, with the automation, it stamps the customer's account, so you know they received the letter. And then if the customer comes back and says, hey, I wasn't notified, it's in the system. So once again, it's a good thing. It's just knowing what the capabilities are and what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I think I was also thinking of one other that just came to mind, considering that this is retail, right? So there's a lot of disputes and deductions that happen within different organizations and payments, right? So I think if you have artificial intelligence, again, there's technology out there that's able to predict the validity of a deduction. And what we've heard from teams is that any team member has to go through 100% of their deductions in order to determine which 5 or 10% are actually invalid deductions, right? And to do that takes a lot of time. That's a lot of research. That's a lot of manual work. Well, a system that's AI enabled is able to actually sort those, pre-sort them for your teams, and make predictions with a percentage of accuracy to say, okay, this, based on all these factors, and it takes into account all these different data points and information in the system, and then it can give you a prediction level. Let's say 95% the confidence that this particular deduction is invalid, and then your teams can work on the ones that are invalid first, and the ones that are valid can actually be closed out automatically again by the system with the percentage of confidence based on this artificial intelligence workflow. So that's kind of another neat thing, I think, that if you're talking about making critical decisions and where's the best way to kind of free up the time and make your analysts more efficient, that's another way that it can be done.
Let me kind of top that one. I got to top this, Elaine. Other thing that you could add to that is you could do your credit application through the automation process too. So you can set up the credit application through the credit module, and basically what it's going to do is allow your customer to go in on a particular link. You give them the link, they sign in, they fill out all the information. The system could automatically go in, pull as far as a credit report or Dun & Bradstreet. Based on that, it could go in, set the credit limit. So you could see everything kind of ties from one module to the next, and that automation right there could really help as far as your organization, because you're going to make sound decisions based on the information that's available.
Right, and no more like you can't leave blanks on that application, because it won't be processed unless the information that's required is in there. So it actually makes that process more streamlined as well.
Well, impressive. That's many demonstrable efficiencies with AI. I'm impressed. Well, hearing no additional questions at this point in time, we will close out the session. So on behalf of RVCF, Staples Promotional Products, and HighRadius, we would like to thank you for being here today. A link to the on-demand version of this webinar will be sent out to everyone following our program once that file is available. And if you have any further questions about the material covered today, please feel free to contact George at george.uko, UKO at staples.com, and Elaine.Nowak, Nowak, at HighRadius.com. Thank you all and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.